in positioning Fivetran's capabilities and features and enablement, it primarily sets in the data management space and then the data ops and machine learning ops space, building those pipelines that produce those data products that then enable analytics. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, sir. TJ, have at it, my friend.
All right, sounds good. Let me go ahead and get screen share going. Let me know when that's live for you all.
Got it.
Perfect. All right. Great. All right. So I'm TJ Holzman. I'm a partner engineer at Fivetran. So I work on our alliances team, working with partners like Great Data Minds on shared presentations like this and other kinds of best practices and solution design. So we're going to talk about Fivetran. I am going to be in slides for a lot of this time, but that's only because what's happening in Fivetran, the product, is happening a lot behind the scenes. So what I'm going to show in the demo will look very simple. And so it's helpful to understand all the good stuff that Fivetran's doing behind that to power the simple UI. So Fivetran is a fully managed data pipeline as a service. What that means is that we handle all of the infrastructure, all of the maintenance for these data pipelines. Our customers don't have to do that. There's no configuration or coding required to use Fivetran. We have over 170 pre-built connectors for various data sources. Many of those connectors come with predefined schemas so that there's always a reliable and predefined way that the data is going to land in the destination warehouse. Our connectors are simple to set up. Any end user really is able to set up a Fivetran connector. I'll demonstrate the Salesforce connector today during the hands-on demo. And we have 24/7 global support. On the right-hand side, you'll see a few of our technology partners. So we partner with Snowflake, Redshift, and BigQuery as our top 3 destination warehouses, but there are other destinations that we support as well. And then we also partner with Looker and Tableau on the business intelligence or visualization side. Was someone else going to say something? I thought I heard something.
I think we're good.
All right, perfect. Okay, so it helps to think about Fivetran in the context of the modern data stack. So starting with source systems on the left, moving through the ingestion layer and loading that data into the data warehouse, and then ultimately running business intelligence, reporting, analytics on the data that's in the warehouse. Fivetran sits exclusively and explicitly in that ingestion layer. So we're very good at efficiently and reliably loading data from various types of sources into the data warehouse, and then letting our customers take advantage of the cheap storage and fast compute within the data warehouse to power transformations, and then ultimately that transformed data feeding the business intelligence layer. The reason that we think about it this way, and I'll refer to it as ELT, is that the classic ETL data pipelines are brittle and dependent. So when there's a source schema change, a new business requirement, a new data need for a report, all of those things require data engineering time to either fix a problem or produce a new use case within the pipeline. And data engineering time is both expensive and can be hard to prioritize and get. So Fivetran aims to make this entire process simpler, more stable, more secure, and most importantly, scalable, so that our customers simply have to authenticate into their data sources, and then Fivetran fully manages the rest of the operation and ongoing maintenance of that data pipeline. This is just a subset of some of the connectors that we have available. Connectors are really the bread and butter of our business, so we're always listening to the market, always adding new connectors. On the left-hand side, you'll see some of the SaaS applications that we have connectors for. Marketing is a very popular use case for us, so you'll see things like Salesforce Marketing Cloud, Google ads, Facebook ads, Twitter ads, and Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics, all your kind of popular SaaS marketing applications. But then we also focus on other application use cases like finance, sales, support. Again, this is just a subset of the connectors that we support. We also can connect to traditional relational databases, both on-premise and cloud hosted. So we have database connectors. We have event-driven connectors for things like Segment and Snowplow, as well as our own incoming webhook connector that you can use to fire off webhooks from various systems. We connect to just about every file storage system you can imagine. We have connectors for all of those, and can do change data capture on files getting loaded into Fivetran. You can also build your own connector with Fivetran. So if there's a particular third-party source that we don't have a pre-built connector for, you can code something using AWS Lambda or Google Cloud Functions, and then use Fivetran to run the scheduling of executing those calls to the API and ultimately writing that data to the destination. And then these are under warehouses, these are destinations that we support. And they're not all listed there. You can always go to fivetran.com/directory and get the full list of connectors that we currently support. All right, so we'll start diving into the actual technical way that Fivetran works. Fivetran is automated, resilient, and cloud native. So Fivetran creates and maintains a perfect replica of your data with minimal user intervention across all of our 170 plus connectors. Fivetran is resilient. Our core architecture enables us to recover from any point of failure with no user intervention required. That's actually really hard to do, and is really a key differentiator for Fivetran in the overall market of data loaders. And Fivetran is cloud native. So our engineers are always monitoring and updating the code for our connectors as source systems change their API or change other technology that impacts how Fivetran's connectors work. And now we'll go even another layer deeper into the technical side of how all this works. The first is that Fivetran has automatic normalization behavior. So what this means is for sources where the schemas are already normalized, you can think here of your traditional relational databases, and then also our Salesforce and NetSuite connectors use a database-like connection. We will simply replicate those normalized schemas in the destination warehouse. So we do a little standardization for things like we'll lowercase all column names, and we use a timestamp format as a convention. But other than that, what you see in the source is exactly what you're going to see in the destination in terms of the schema structure itself. For denormalized data sources, so this is most of our application connectors and then pretty much anything coming from an API, we automatically will create normalized schemas for that denormalized data. So if we get something like a JSON object, we are going to automatically create a table structure that represents what we see in that JSON object. As part of doing that normalization, we also create entity relationship diagrams for most of our application connectors. So these ERDs are reliable, they're maintained over time. So as a source API maybe adds support for a new object in that API, Fivetran is going to update our connector, and we'll also update the ERD for that connector. One of our business intelligence partners actually doesn't even log in to the destination warehouse to write the SQL that drives their reporting. They simply just use these ERDs as the reference guide for their SQL queries. So it's, again, a real differentiator for Fivetran and something that we're super proud of in the market. Next, Fivetran does automatic schema migration. So as changes are happening source side, we're also going to make the appropriate change in the destination to accommodate that source side change. The way this works is that when a column or table is added at the source, we will simply add that column or table at the destination automatically. When a column or table is removed at the source, Fivetran generally doesn't delete anything in the destination, so we'll simply leave that column or table as is, but we'll stop writing to it. And then for a data type change, Fivetran can actually infer that a data type change has occurred, and we'll make the appropriate change in the destination that will handle both the historical data type as well as the new data type that's coming through. So we do all of that automatically. And then our incremental syncs or our incremental batch updates follow a similar mode of working. So when records are inserted at the source, we will automatically insert those records at the destination warehouse. For updates, the way that we've historically handled updates is that we would simply execute the same update at the destination warehouse, effectively overwriting the data that previously existed there. We have a newer feature that has come out called history mode, where we're actually implementing type 2 slowly changing dimensions and providing automatically created history tables on the fly for our customers. That's available today for our Salesforce connector, and it's available in private preview for all of our database connectors. So that's a huge time save for our customers and partners, so that they're not having to build out history tables themselves. And then in the case of deleted records at the source, again, Fivetran won't actually delete those records from the data warehouse, but will instead maintain a metadata column called Fivetran deleted, and will simply flag those records to true, which is effectively a soft delete at the destination. And now we will jump into the product and take a look at how all of this works. All right, so what I'm looking at is just the simple setup of a destination warehouse in Fivetran. This is actually not that interesting. It's simply plugging in a URL, your credentials, and testing the connection. So I'm not actually going to show it, but just want to give the context that the end result of everything I'm going to show is that the data is getting written to a Snowflake warehouse. Where it gets more interesting is talking about the connectors themselves. We've actually just redesigned this connector view. It used to be much more condensed, and you had to click a lot more to get to a specific connector. But the way it works now is I can get this immediate view of all the connectors I have set up in this account, the name of the connector, the source that data is coming from, the status of the connector, so I can quickly see if there's an issue with any connectors. In this case, I've got one that's paused. Maybe that's something I need to take a look at. I would also see here if something was in the middle of a sync, or if there had been an error, I would get a broken message for the status. And then I can also look at the time that a connector last synced. This is all also filterable. So if there was something in particular that I was looking for, like a Google Cloud Storage connector, I can filter the list. I can filter it based on the status or based on the source that's coming from. So we just redesigned this, and it's been getting very good feedback from our customers so far. All right, so let's go ahead and set up a connector and see how that looks. When I click the Add Connector button, I'm going to get this list of just some of our more popular connectors, but I can immediately filter that list by typing in the search box and getting the connector that I want to set up. I'm going to set up our Salesforce Sandbox connector today. It's functionally the same as our Salesforce connector, but it just hits a different endpoint and doesn't have any impact on our production Salesforce instance. So I'm going to use Salesforce Sandbox. The other thing to point out is that all new connectors include a 14-day free trial. So This is even if you're an existing Fivetran customer and you just want to play around with a new connector, you get both the historical sync as well as 14 days of incremental syncs for no cost. And at the end of that, we'll send you an estimate of what the approximate usage costs would be for that connector. When I come into the connector setup screen, one thing to point out is that the setup guide itself, our documentation, is embedded right here within the UI. So you don't have to go jumping around from the documentation and back into the product. Anything that you might need to set up this connector is right here embedded into the screen. And all I have to do for Salesforce is set up the name for the destination schema. So this schema name is permanent and it needs to be unique for the destination. But other than that, I can pretty much call it whatever I want. I'm just going to add my initials to the end of Salesforce Sandbox. When I click authorize, if I hadn't been logged into that system today, I would get a standard login screen where I could type in my credentials and then authorize the connection. Because I've already logged into Salesforce Sandbox for a demo that I did earlier this morning, it's just detecting that authentication and using my current user for this connector. When I click Save and Test, Fivetran's actually going to connect to that API, make sure that the user I'm connecting with has the appropriate permissions to access the API, and then I'll get a status message of whether that connection has been successful or not. If it had failed, there would be, an error message associated where I could start to do some troubleshooting of what the issue is. All right, from here, there's only two things I need to do before I can actually start the historical sync. The first is that I need to tell Fivetran exactly what data I want to load from Salesforce. So these are all of the tables in my Salesforce instance or Salesforce Sandbox instance. And then these are the columns that are part of those tables. One thing I can do here is very quickly start filtering out data that I don't want Fivetran to load. So if I had particular tables or even just specific columns that I didn't care about bringing in as part of the data load, and I don't need that data in the warehouse, I can deselect those columns. I can also hash columns on the fly as part of the data load by selecting this other checkbox for hash column. So if I had PII, PHI, other kinds of sensitive data that I need to bring into the warehouse for using it in a SQL join, for example, but I don't want to actually expose that data to an analyst who's in the warehouse, I can obfuscate it as part of the data load using this hash column feature. It's a SHA-256 hash on the back end, and that's it. Of note is that one of our competitors, when they saw this functionality in the UI, said that it accounted for about 60% of their in-flight transformation use cases. So it's pretty powerful functionality to just offer end users quickly with checkboxes in the UI. I'll click Save and Continue. And the last thing I have to do is tell Fivetran what the frequency of syncs should be after the historical sync is complete. So this is the frequency at which Fivetran is going to go back to the source for an incremental update. It can be anything from every 5 minutes or as infrequently as just once a day. If I do pick once a day, I can also set an explicit time for that sync so that I don't have to say, come into Fivetran at 3 a.m. To run syncs nightly at 3 a.m. I can just click that, and that's when Fivetran's going to run this sync. That is pretty much it in terms of setting up a connector. From here, I would just start the initial sync. Fivetran would start loading all of the historical data from my Salesforce Sandbox instance, and then it would execute on a frequency that I specified on the Setup tab. Since we don't want to wait for a long historical sync to complete, I'm going to go to a different connector and show what that looks like as syncs are running on a schedule. So I get some status indicators right at the top of when the next sync is going to run, whether or not the pipeline is healthy and is running on schedule. And then in the sync history, I can get a very good view of the actual syncs that are occurring. So it looks like this one only runs once a day. And if I hover over this indicator, I get some metadata about the sync itself, how long it took, when it started, when it ended, how much data was loaded as part of the overall process, how long each step of the process took for that sync. If there had been any kind of error, I would also get typically a red bar here, and then the error message would also get exposed in this pop-up. We also maintain very robust logs about everything happening during a sync. So if I click on the logs tab, this is every metadata event happening during the incremental sync. Everything from the beginning of the sync to the end of the sync. This is written in JSON entries. So each of these have metadata about what's going on during that step of the sync. You can, using the free Fivetran log connector, you can write all of these log entries to your destination warehouse if you need to do auditing or reporting on the actual status of syncs or the work that Fivetran is doing. On our enterprise pricing tier, you can also connect a logging service like AWS CloudWatch or Google Stackdriver, and you can send Fivetran logs to a cloud monitoring service and just incorporate it in with the other kinds of monitoring that you may already be doing. If there is an error, that's also going to get flagged on this alerts section of the UI. And you can also get email notifications for connector issues, connector errors. The last thing to mention before we wrap up is transformations. So we do offer a couple of ways to use Fivetran to execute transformations within the warehouse. So again, these are going to be post-load transformations, and Fivetran is simply just going to be kicking off the execution of those transformations. The first and the older way that we've done transformations is just using basic SQL. So I could come in and plug in a SQL script here and then tell Fivetran to run that SQL script in the destination warehouse, either when new data arrives or on a specific schedule. Good for some use cases, not super advanced in terms of chaining transformations together or kind of building out a graph of transformations. So the way that we're offering more complex or more robust transformations is through our partnership with DB2. If you're not familiar, DB2 is an open source transformation and snapshot tool. The way that our integration works is that you can both execute transformations with DB2 through the Fivetran interface. And we've also created a bunch of DB2 packages, open source DB2 packages that are specific to our connectors. And they kind of provide an initial staging layer as well as some initial transformations based on popular customer use cases for transformations. That's pretty much what I've got to cover. So I know that the chat has been blowing up. I would love to take some questions. Happy to dive in and show a few more things if it becomes needed based on where the questions take us.
Excellent. Thank you, TJ. Yeah, I got a couple here. First, we'll start with two questions from Kim. Is the auto schema generation, is that out of the box, or does it require some additional integration and transformation work?
No, so the automatic schema migration is just part of the Fivetran core process. So there is a setting on a connector itself where you can basically turn it off or on. So there's a checkbox for load new tables and columns by default. That checkbox can be off or on. It's on by default. But yeah, part of Fivetran's value is in those automatic schema migrations so that there's no ongoing maintenance, no manual intervention that a customer needs to do.
Awesome. And her second question was, can the pipelines be set up to do near real-time or streaming functions?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Fivetran is ultimately a batch process, a batch sync process. We don't have a true real-time or streaming use case that we support today. You can do things again like event-driven connectors. That's not quite the same as a streaming use case. So yeah, it's better to think of Fivetran as a batch process. Even if you get down to 5 minutes, we're still batching it. Even if you use our incoming webhook, we're still batching it on the back end. So it's not a true streaming pipeline.
Yeah, so this is kind of an interesting question. It almost is to the group at large from Francesco, but he says, we can normalize JSON into a relational schema with multiple tables. Why aren't any BI tools doing it? And we did hear from a couple people that Power BI does it. Are you guys aware of any other BI tools that are being able to process JSON documents into a relational schema?
I'm not aware of that myself offhand, but I'm also not intimately familiar with BI tools generally because I work on the other side of things. So.
Eat them.
Exactly. Yeah.
I give them the meat. And then here's one from Peter. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Can we convert XML into normalized schemas?
I don't think that XML is a file type that we support. Actually, I'm going to check on that real quick.
Okay. And then he had kind of like a subset. And would it be based on XSD?
Yeah, we definitely don't do XSD, and yes, XML is not a supported file type.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, that's the questions we have right now. And we got a few people, piling on. In theory, XML could be converted to JSON.
Yeah, in theory, sure. Yes, and someone who isn't me but is using my name is answering questions, so that's great.
That's great. Yeah, I was going to say that's pretty multi-talented.
Oh, it's Craig. Oh, great. So Craig's here. Craig's actually my manager.
Yeah.
So
thanks, Craig. So as you're walking through those capabilities, and actually the first time I saw it, I was like, my goodness, if I could have had access to this kind of stuff as a data architect working with my integration architects, because we had to design all those patterns. We had to figure out that the historical versioning and schema change detection. The way we took care of that is we executed a policy between us and the sources that they would tell us they were going to change it before they did. Of course, in theory, that didn't happen. So I just think it's such cool stuff. You get all that noise out of the way so I can just focus on moving data as quickly as I can.
Right, and then frees you up for the things that really drive business value, right? As opposed to chugging away on writing a data pipeline.
Mm-hmm. Kim's got another question here. Is SCD2 coming and when?
Yeah, so we call it history mode. It is an implementation of type 2 slowly changing dimensions. It's available today, GA, for our Salesforce connector. It is available today in private preview for all of our database connectors. And that's something that if you are a Fivetran customer, you can have that turned on by just talking to your account manager or your CSM. Mm-hmm. And I think the database connector history mode is meant to be GA by the end of April.
Okay, great. Yeah, this is some great stuff.
Yeah, we're seeing a ton of excitement around history mode because they're just building out history tables yourselves is incredibly time consuming. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a way to I just saw that question come in, Francesco. Yeah, I do play guitar, I play piano, I've played most of my life. So
well, we have to get together. I play bass.
Oh, perfect. We can get a little band together next time.
There you go. Looking to see if any other questions flow in. Not seeing anything right now. TJ, amazing product. I asked a question earlier on how many people on the call programmed in Fortran. So tell me is Fivetran a play off of Fortran?
Fivetran is absolutely a play off of Fortran. Yep.
It took me a while. It was, after I first saw a review on your product, and then I was thinking about it. I was like, wait a minute. Oh, these guys are pretty smart.
Yeah.
Well, folks, is there any other questions out there that we'd like to ask? Please chime in.
Yeah, I know we went super fast, but sometimes that's the way it goes with Fivetran because it's just we aim to make it very simple, very easy to use, and kind of take care of all of the complicated stuff behind the scenes.
Yeah, easy to demo too, huh?
Yeah, very easy to demo. Yeah.
Okay. How about Mike's SQL database? Can you capture changes from MySQL database schema?
Yeah, we sure can. So we use log-based replication to do CDC, and we use the native capability within the database technology. So I forget what that is for MySQL offhand, but for example, for SQL Server, that we're going to be using CDC or CT, change tracking. For Oracle, it'll be LogMiner or Flashback. Yeah, we're going to use native log-based replication for the database itself.
Okay.
Bin logs. There he is. Thanks, Craig.
Bin logs. and is that for the schema detection as well as change data capture?
I believe that also captures that's how we do the schema detection for for database connections too.
Awesome. How many Informatica clients have you converted?
I'm sure we have converted Informatica clients. Madison might have a little bit more info on the sales side of that.
All right, now we're getting down in the space that I used to know and love. VSAM, QSAM, IBM Mainframe Connectors.
So let's take it apart a little bit. So VSAM and QSAM, I'm not personally familiar with. Craig might know a little bit more about those. We do have an IBM Db2 connector that's available now in private preview just for the LUW flavors of Db2. We're going to support Zios and the other one that I'm not going to remember right now, the other mainframe OS. In the future. But yes, IBM Db2 LUW is available today in private preview.
Okay, great. If anybody needs to, some work, knowledge around VSAM, give me a call. I used to. All right. Well, Julie, I think if there's no more questions, we can let people take a little bit of a break.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Madison, Craig. Thank you, guys.
Perfect. Appreciate the questions and have a good rest of the event.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Take care now.